Hello and welcome. My name is Trey Bremer. I'm with Mitel, and today I'm going to talk about the 6920 IP phone with you. We're going to go over its interesting features and its basic layout. We're also going to talk about voicemail briefly. Here's a few things to remember moving forward. One is you must dial a 9 to get an outside line. So 9 area code and phone number to make a call. You must dial the area code for all outbound dialing. You don't need to dial a 1 for long distance or toll-free dialing, so no 1 needed. If you accidentally dial the 1, it'll still work, but good to get in the habit of not dialing the 1 so you don't accidentally dial 911. Your default voicemail password will be the same as your extension, but once you go into your voicemail for the first time, you'll have to change that to be a new passcode. But initially, first time in, you'll want to go ahead and dial your extension to be your passcode. One other thing I didn't list, but just to remind you, if you accidentally dial 911, don't hang up. Stay on the line, let them know you accidentally dialed, because even though you think you hung up quick enough, you probably haven't, and they'll dispatch. Here's the basic layout of the 6920 IP phone. Let's kind of just talk about the lay of the land here to give you an idea of where we are when we look at each slide. So the very top section, you can see you have your display. On your display, on the left-hand side of your display, you have 6 staggered keys. Those are to fix functions on the phone. Below the display, you'll see 4 buttons. These 4 buttons control a dynamic area that changes depending on the conditions of the phone. I'll show you that as we go along. You see a circle on that top area of the phone. That's a navigation tool. It'll allow you to navigate from page to page or through functions or through setups. I'll show you when that comes into play. And almost impossible to see, but at the very top of the right-hand side of the phone is a voicemail message indicator light that will blink when you have new voicemail messages. Below that silver line, that black area, you can see you have your standard keypad, but on either side of that keypad, you have little icon buttons. It's set up pretty logically. On the left-hand side, they are all things like settings and getting to your voicemail and setting your volume and a couple things like call history and contacts. And over on the right hand side, it's more call control, things like muting the phone if you need to, placing the call on hold, and so on and so forth. We'll talk about each button individually so you get an idea of how it's laid out. I think it makes some sense as you go through it. So let's go ahead and take a look first at the navigation key. It's your little silver circle, and the way it's set up is the outside ring allows you to go up, down, left, or right. The very center of the ring is a select key, and you would select things like if you were going into a special menu and you scroll over to it, you hit the select, it'll bring you into a sub menu. It also works when you want to dial somebody. So if you are in your call history and you scroll over to a name, you can then hit the center and that would redial that person. And we'll talk about it as we go through. Here's what the main display looks like. Let's start at the top and we'll work our way down. So starting at the very top, you see that blue area, that navy blue area. Over on the left-hand side is your extension number. That's on this one, it's fictitious, but yours will be your extension number. And then heading over to the left, to the right-hand side, are little indicators to additionally let you know of things that are going on with the phone. The first one is a little reel-to-reel indicator. That's just letting you know you have voicemail messages when you see that you haven't listened to, unheard voicemail messages. The next little indication, it has a 4 and it looks like a little ricochet arrow and a line. That's just indicating that you've missed calls. In this case, you've missed 4 calls, but it will indicate how many calls you've missed. So that way, if you go to lunch and you come back, you can look at your display and see if you missed calls or not. The little boxes that you see that are in green are just letting you know that you are attached to the network and everything's going well. If you ever see a little box or multiple boxes in yellow or red, you might want to call your IT department and let them know. Below that, starting on the left-hand side, you can see next to those 6 staggered keys, you have little, first one was My Phone. That's line 1. It says My Phone Now. But when a call comes in, it'll blink that light associated to the button, and it'll also give you the caller identification phone number right there. The next key down is your line 2. So if you're on line 1, another call comes in, you'll see it indicate on line 2. Again, it'll not say line 2 anymore. It'll give you the caller identification phone number. So you'll have that. And then you'll notice that you have 4 additional blanks that can be whatever you would like them to be. You can make it a function of the phone. I'll show you how to do that. Or you can make it someone internally that you dial, an extension number, or it could be an outside number. So I'll show you how to program that. It's very easy. Now, in some of your cases, you may have a button already programmed on there if you're answering someone else's phone or if you're a part of a group. It's varied, so I didn't put it on there, but you could, when you first look at it, see you have some additional keys taken. But that'll always be with ringing keys that will allow you to press the button and answer either an individual's phone or answer a group phone. Moving towards the center of the white area, you can see you have your time and your date. Below that, it's offering you the redial number. If you hit redial, that's the number it's going to dial. Every time you make an outbound call, it'll change that number to indicate an extension or an outside number that you last dialed. And then you can see below that is that dynamic area I was talking about, the gray area, which is going to associate itself to different functions depending on where you are on a call. In this case, we happen to be, the phone's idle, so it's just offering you redial if you'd like to redial that last number. All right. So next thing I want to show you is that you have multiple pages of blanks. See down below, you see the 2 dots. The one that's in blue means that you're on page 1, and there's an additional page. If you use your navigation key to go to the right, it'll take you to a second page, which is blank and available for you to program other people's speed dials, things like outside numbers, extension numbers, cell phone numbers, whatever you need. You can program up. Going left or right on the navigation key will take you between the 2 pages when you're on the main page. So that's a good indicator. To program one of these keys, it's a lot like it would be in a modern car. You'll hold down one of the staggered keys next to a blank that you'd like to create the button for. So let's just say we're going to do the very top button there. I would just hold that button down for about 3 or 4 seconds, and then it'll pop up this indication, which will allow me to program either the name first and then either an outside number, remembering to dial 9 area code and phone number, or an internal extension. I could put a name or nickname and then put in the extension number of the person. Marking something as private, as you can see, is in that yellow box. It just means that anyone looking at your phone will not see the phone number. So if you wanted to put your home phone number on your desk phone, but you don't want people going past your phone and seeing your home phone number, you can mark it as private, and then it'll only show the label that you have indicated. Okay, you can see that's first thing that comes up when you hold down the button. That's the speed call. If you scroll over and down to other features, that'll give you some other features. Most of these you probably won't care about or use, but a couple of them is phone lock. If for some reason you wanted to lock your phone, it'll make you use a code to open it. That would be if you were in an open area somewhere where you're concerned about people using your phones. Call forward always is an on and off button. You set up the call forwarding in the settings, which I would show you, but then you can have a button to turn that on and off. So let's say at lunchtime you forward your phones to someone else in the office. You could go ahead and indicate, set up a button that is for that, turning that on and off, and then at lunch you can set up the forwarding so it goes to someone else by hitting the button and then turning it off when you return. Do not disturb shuts your phone off for inbound call traffic and allows everything to go to voicemail. So you can create this button for yourself if you're someone who, say, needs to check their voicemail a lot in the evenings or weekends. That way you can turn off your phone, so when you call into your own phone, you go right to your voicemail box and you can get in very quickly. Or if you don't want people to hear a bunch of rings in your office, you can put in do not disturb. It's an on and off. It turns it on or turns it off when you create the button. Account code verification and non-verification has to do with if you are set up to have that, which you guys are not, so you don't have to worry about those 2 keys. Below where it says more, it just tells you the version of the phone that you're running and the some specifics about the phone. Nothing to really worry about on that. Once you select, say I'm going to make a do not disturb key, I would use my navigation key, scroll over and then down to where it says do not disturb, and then hit save to save it as a key, and I'll say do not disturb on my key. Or if I program one of the speed dials to be somebody, I would hit save after I've created it. Here's what an incoming call looks like. Here comes the call. Now you can see that I used to say my phone up top. Right now, what it's not showing you is that where you see the caller identification up top, it's going to be kind of blinking. So you have some visual indications as well. It's going to have an audible ring. And it will tell you that the caller ID name and number in the body of the display. And over where it said my phone, it just shows you the number. You can see that a key now has changed. It no longer offers you redial, but it's offering you answer if you wanted to answer the call. If you hit that button and you don't wear a headset, it's going to answer it on your speaker. So obviously best practice is to pick up the handset if you're not wearing a headset. If you're wearing a headset, you can use that answer key to answer the call if you'd like. But here comes the ring. We're going to go ahead and answer it. When we answer it, it'll settle in and stop ringing. A timer will begin under the time and date, which will let you know how long the phone call has been in the system, not just to you. So if you see a minute, you know that they've been looking around for a while. Caller ID settles into the display as well. And you can notice the dynamic area, the gray area below, has changed completely. It's now offering other things than answer or redial. It's now offering transfer, add user, or end the call. Usually you use the end the call when you're wearing a headset, but if you do hit it, it will hang up and give you dial tone on your handset. Mostly it's about transferring it or adding a user, which is conference basically. You can add up to 7 people, yourself and 6 others on a conference call. And this is you reaching out to bring people into the conference. This isn't setting up a bridge or anything. So this would be like mostly used if you need to bring a secondary party into the conversation internally or outside. But that's what it is. So these are the keys. Let's first talk about transferring a call. How do we do that? So the call has come in and I've answered it. So here we are at that point where I've answered the call. I'm talking to the person. I realize I need to transfer it. I would then press the key at the bottom right below where it says transfer. I will then dial the extension number of the person I want to transfer it to and then hit transfer again to complete it. If I wanted to stay on the line, if I hit initially the transfer, then dial your extension, and then stay on the line, don't hit transfer right away, I would hear your phone ring, you pick up. I can have a private conversation where I say, someone from ABC company is on the line, and you would say send them through, and then I would hit transfer to complete it. Okay, now a couple things can happen here. Let's just say a call comes in, I hit transfer and I dial your extension, and here I am at this screen. Let's just say I talk to you and you say, hey, don't jump off the phone, stay on this one, I want you to hear this. Instead of hitting transfer, I can hit join calls and we'd all 3 be connected together. So it's a way we can join all of our calls together. You also see it has an option called trade calls. Trade calls is the ability to not cancel the transfer, but for me to jump back to the original caller. A scenario like that would be, let's say I hit transfer and I dial your extension. I say, hey, someone from ABC company is on the phone. And you say, well, who is it with ABC company? I work with 5 people there. I'll say, hold on one second. I can hit trade call, go back to the original caller. I'm sorry, sir. Who are you with ABC company? That person would give the name. I would hit trade call again. I'd get back to you and I would give you the name. If it sounded good to you, I can then hit transfer to complete the call. Okay. So it gives me a chance to bounce between the 2 people I'm talking to if more information is needed to be gained before I transfer the call. May or may not use that a lot, but it's there for you. Back to held is canceling the transfer completely. So let's just say I hit transfer, I dial your extension, and you're on the call, and I say someone from ABC company, and you say, hey, can you have them call me back at 1 o'clock? I'm walking into a meeting. Then I go, okay, no problem. I'll hit back to hold. That cancels any kind of transfer I have set up. And I go back to that original caller and I can talk to them and either transfer them to somebody else or send them to your voicemail or whatever I need to do there. So those are the functions that you have when you're doing a transfer. And it's going to be a lot like this when you're doing a conference. You'll notice that when you hit transfer and dial the extension, it brought you to a screen that also offers you join calls. So just because initially you were thinking it was going to be a transfer, maybe it ends up being a conference call after getting more information. But let's talk about doing a conference call from scratch. Here comes the call. We've answered it at this point. And instead of hitting transfer, even though I could hit transfer, just to keep it straight in your head, I'm going to hit add user, because I want to add users together. Now, this could be a call that came in or a call that I've made. It doesn't matter. But the bottom line is there's two people on the call. I'm talking to somebody, and we decided we need to get a conference going. So I'm going to hit add user, and it's going to take me to that same screen. But this time, I'm going to dial a phone number or an extension number of somebody I want to add in, just like I'm doing for a transfer. But rather than hit transfer, I'm going to hit join calls. Then will all three be joined together. The same functionality works where it'll say trade calls and that kind of thing. So I can make it, go back and forth before I set up the conference. You'll know the conference is set up because the display will then say three-party conference to let you know we're all three together. Now you'll notice that the dynamic area has changed a little bit. I can transfer this conference call to a fourth person if I wanted to. I can also add another user. I can keep adding users until I have up to 7 people on the call, right? The other function it gives me is a split. Okay, a split allows me to split the call off. So let's just say we have 3 people on the conference and you're saying something you shouldn't say. I could hit split. It would put everybody on hold, and I can then trade calls until I get to the right person and then have a private conversation with them. Okay, so not ideal, but it's a available function. Leaving the call means that I've set up the conference call, but I don't want to participate anymore. I can leave that call. And you'll need to use that function if you want to get off. Like, let's just say I'm trying to set up a conference for a couple people, and then I have no intention of staying on the call. Once I get it all set up, I could say, okay, thanks very much, and then I can hit leave call, and that leaves the conference working, but I'm no longer part of it. Now, if somebody internal is on the conference call, you don't have to, you could just hang up the call. But if you are the only internal person to the call and you need to keep it going, say someone's on their cell phone, your boss is on their cell phone, and you've set up a conference for them, then you can leave that call without disrupting the conference. Okay, hopefully that makes some sense. Let's kind of talk about the more cryptic kind of icons that go on the buttons on either side of the dial pad. We'll start over on the left-hand side at the top and work our way down. So the first thing is your contacts key. So a little fella there. The contacts key will be 2 things. One, corporate contacts that you can look up, and the other thing would be contacts that you've added in. So you only have so many buttons on the phone, and maybe you want somebody, keep a number or something, but you don't want them to take up real estate on your buttons on your phone, right? So this is a place you could store them. So you have a thing called personal contacts. Those are going to be ones you've added in, and it could be someone internal, or it can be someone outside. So let's just say I have a group of people I work with. I don't call them all the time, but I want a quick way to access their number. I can add them as a personal contact. By hitting add new, I can go ahead and put in their name and their information. If I wanted to also, in my call history, which I'll show you next, I could add them in as a personal contact there. So if someone calls me, I'm like, ooh, I better keep that number and that name. Then I can add them in and modify the name if I need to. Okay, so that's how that works. Add new. I can delete a contact if I don't need it anymore. By scrolling over using the navigation key, it'll allow you to go from your personal to your corporate by going up and down, or if you go over to the right-hand side, you'll be able to highlight one of those people, and then it will offer you to dial it on the gray area on your display, but you can also hit the center of the navigation key to do that as well. So here we are going over and highlighting. You can see once I've highlighted it, it offers me a different display down below where it says dial, delete, add new, close to close it out. So I can dial that from there, but I can also dial it by hitting the center of the navigation key. And what it's doing is it's dialing the number listed, the main number listed or extension number listed. On these contacts, you could add additional information. So as new, not only could I have this person's in this case, Bertha's extension number, but I could add in her cell phone number if I have it or other information. And if I keep highlight, like if I scroll down and highlight Bertha and then go over to the right one more time, it's going to take me to a layout where I can edit it and add more numbers in. I got their mobile number, I got their work number, whatever I want in there. So it's kind of cool. The other portion of this is going to be the corporate numbers. Now, this is the slides can fool you a little bit. When you go to corporate, there's nothing listed at all. You have to enter at least one letter of the last name. It's all driven by last name. So you'd have to put in, obviously, the more of the last name you put in, the closer you're going to get to the person. So if it's Smith or something, the more Smith you put in there, the closer you're going to get to Smith. So on this, you would use your dial pad to put in at least one or two letters of the person's last name so you can narrow it down. It'll show you all the matches, and then you can use your navigation key going to the right and going down to highlight that person to dial them. So it's similar to how it was in personal, but on this one you have to at least search out the first few people. And remember, there's a lot of phones, so you know, you want to put in probably a few letters to get as close as you can to scroll through everything. Okay. Here's your call history button, the little arrows up and down. Call history will give you everything. It'll give you missed calls, outgoing calls, or received calls, so you can separate them out. If you just want to see what calls you missed, you can use your navigation key to scroll down once, and then you would see just missed calls. You can see the missed calls are indicated much like they are up top, where it's a little ricochet off of that line. Outgoing is the arrow up and to the right, and then down to the left is the received. Everything is just kind of those arrows going back and forth like you saw on the button. So if I wanted to dial back one of these people, I could scroll over to the right, and then the gray area would allow me to then dial if I wanted to, or again, I can hit the center of the navigation key. So when I scroll over also in my call history, it's going to give me the ability to add the contact, which is a big deal. So rather than me having to fill out the initial information for this person, I can add them to my contact once they call me, and I can then have them part of my personal contacts up above. Okay. And then you can delete, and I don't know why you do that, but it pushes out all the old and brings in all the new. So the very top one is going to be the latest and greatest. As you go down, it goes back in history a bit. Here's your voicemail key. This is how you're going to access your voicemail. I think you remember when we first started, I said, you know, your initial passcode is going to be your extension number. So the first time when you get your phone all set up and you're ready to go, you're going to want to hit that button. It's going to then ask for your passcode. You'll put in your extension number, and then it's going to take you through a tutorial that'll allow you to set up your voicemail. It's going to ask you to do three things. Set up a new passcode. You'll need to put in your first and last name, and then it'll ask you to set up a greeting. So be prepared with those items. Remember, your PIN code protects you from outside callers and internal callers accessing your voicemail and changing things or getting in your system. So you don't want to make it 1, 2, 3, 4. Make it something fairly complex, or something, a number that you use that isn't, you know, 2, 4, 6, 8, that kind of thing. So keep that in mind for security reasons. We'll go back to voicemail again, but I just want to show you on the display that that's the icon you'll see when you have that voicemail. And then up in that little corner, I just want to indicate to you on the display that you see the little light blink when you have new voicemail messages. But at the very end of this, I'll go through the voicemail, kind of how it's set up very briefly to give you an idea. You don't need a lot of education on that because there's no mystery when you get in the voicemail. It walks you through everything. So we'll talk about it a little more. Here's your settings key. There's a couple settings that you may be interested in, and I've kind of highlighted that. If you want a deeper dive into the settings, I have made available the full guide as well as a quick reference which references some of the settings. The ones I'm most interested in are the ones I've laid out here. One is called Call Forward. I showed you earlier how you could set up an on and off button to turn on and off call forwarding. Say at lunchtime you forward your phones to somebody else in the office. This is where you'll have to go to set up that person's extension number and to turn it on initially so you can then use that button that you've created. So this corresponds with the button that you can hold down and access and create a button for your phone. The way it works, pretty simple. Your call forward, when you press that, It just asks you to put in the extension number of the person you want to call forward it to. If you're call forwarding for some reason to an outside number, you could put in 9 and the area code and phone number. Below, it gives you forwarding for different reason types, like only when I'm busy for internal calls. Most of the time, you're not going to use those. Only when I don't answer, that sort of thing. But this is basically, you want to forward it to somebody, then you would need to set up the button first, and then come here and set up the extension you want it to forward to. And pretty easy, and then you hit save. Audio is another one I think is good. The default ringtone is kind of sing-songy, so if you like that or don't like it, this is where you could go in and receive more choices. This is also where you can go if you're wearing a headset. If you're wearing a headset and you scroll over where it says audio, if you use the navigation key and go straight down, it'll ask you for the audio path, and you can change it to be headset. And that way, when you hit the speaker key, it'll go to your headset right away. If you don't set that up, you have to hit the headset key twice to answer on your headset. If you're wearing a non-Mitel headset, wired headset or something that you have. But if you just select it, it's going to bring you into the ringtones, which is kind of nice. You could set up a different ring for internal and external calling. And all you do is scroll over to the right and you'll hear it start playing, and then scrolling down, you'll hear each one. When you get closer to the bottom, it's the more classic ring types. But it's kind of nice, especially if you're in an area where you're around a lot of people, you'll soon get to know your own ringtone, so it's helpful. Once you find the ringtone you want, hit save, and it'll save that ringtone and go back in and do the external. So it does take you out when you hit save, so you have to go back in to change each of the different ringtones. Okay. Next is the display. This might be my personal annoyance, but I'm going to just touch on it really quick. What happens is, after, by default, 5 minutes, your phone will bring this very dimly lit screensaver up. And it saves energy overnight, that kind of thing. But you can adjust that timer if you like, so it doesn't pop up. You can also adjust the brightness in general of the display. So up top, you can see it gives you the brightness. By default, I think it's like midway, but you can adjust it up or down. And then the screensaver, if you don't want the screensaver popping up after 5 minutes and dimming the display down, then you can adjust that timer. I don't know why it bothers me, because when the phone does ring, it does snap it out of that screensaver, but I don't like it dimming so quickly. So you can bring it up to like 55 minutes if you wanted to, or something like that. And then you could even say what level it dims itself to, so it's not so dim. If you wanted to change the dimmer level, you could go up. So even when after that 5 or 55 minutes is up, it won't go totally dark. Setting those levels, you'll use the little arrow keys, which is a little unusual because you use navigation all the way up to here. But you'll notice that when you scroll down, you'll need to use the little arrow keys that are in the gray area, left or right. Not sure why you're not using navigation, but that's the way that works. Okay, so that's just a few of the settings I want to show you under there. Here's another one for you. It's your volume. This will control everything. So when your phone is ringing initially, you can use that volume control to adjust it. By default, it's right at the center. And if you have a hard time hearing it, that's what you want to do first thing, is when a call comes in, adjust that ringer up or down, and then it'll save it automatically when you go up. Also, that controls the ring volume of the handset or the speaker separately. So you can turn on the speaker, adjust the speaker volume, pick up the handset, adjust the handset volume. So all those volumes are controlled right there. Okay. Now we're over to the right-hand side. And like I was saying before, those are all tools on the one side. Now this is all kind of call control type items. First one is hang up. So if you are wearing a headset, this is a very handy key to have. That way, when I'm on the headset, I can just hit the hang up key when I'm done with the call. If you're not using a headset, it really doesn't come into play very often, nor at all. When you hang up the handset, it's hanging up the phone. So you really don't need that button if you don't wear a headset. This takes you to the redial list. Earlier on the display, you saw that the last number I dialed when the phone is idle, it shows redial. That's the last one. But let's just say I really want to call back the second or third person on my list. When I hit this, it takes me to my call history, but it takes me right to outgoing calls. So I can scroll over very quickly and go down to Mark if I wanted to call Mark. So it just gives you a quicker way to access. Otherwise, you're going to have to hit the call history button and then scroll down to outgoing, then scroll over. So it just saves you a step. Next button down is your hold key. When you place a call on hold, it doesn't do it much justice here, but it'll show that little pause indicator, like a pause button you see on an old VCR. And that'll kind of be blinking between white and orange. So you're going to have an indicator that it's on hold. And then to recover it, you're just going to hit the corresponding button that is lit in red to recover that call. Now, a nice thing about the phone is, let's just say you're on a call and another call comes in to line 2. I don't have to hit the hold key. All I have to do is say hold on and hit this line 2 key, and it'll automatically put the first caller on hold. So it's quicker. I don't have to remember that little pause key is the hold key. So it's a quick way to do it when you have another call. But if you are on only a single call and you need to place them on hold because you need to go grab a file or something, then you'll want to hit the hold button and then recover it by hitting the call key that it's on hold for. Next one down is mute. It'll mute the handset. If you're wearing a headset, it'll mute that, or the speaker. So you can hear them talk, but they can't hear you. You can sneeze, cough, whatever you need to do. They won't hear you. It's immediate. Just hit the button again and it turns the mute off. So if you're in a noisy area, sometimes it's nice during a conference call or something to mute, and you can still hear the conversation going on. The next button down is your speaker or headset key. Remember that if you went into those settings and went down, if you're wearing a wired headset, you can, or even if you're wearing one of our headsets, you can make it so you can press that button one time to answer it. You will have a button if you're using a Mitel headset on the side of your ear, but sometimes it kind of gets old hitting the side of your ear every time a call comes in. So it's kind of nice to be able to hit the button on the phone. Remember to change the audio path to headset. If you do that, then you hit it once and you've answered on your headset. If you hit it again, you're on speaker. If you haven't set it up, then the first time you hit it, you're on speaker and then headset. So you have to kind of double tap it if you don't set up that setting. But that's your speaker. You'll hear over the speaker if you hit that. And of course, it controls your headset as well. Let's kind of talk about voicemail. Remember the key, it's that reel to reel. And you saw the indicator that's up on the display as well. Remember, your default voicemail pin is the same as your extension the first time you go in, and you're going to want to set it up to personalize it pretty quickly. There is kind of a default message. It just says the person at this extension is not available. So you want to get that personalized and get it set up as soon as you can. Remember the 3 things you're going to need to do. You're going to need to set up a new passcode. So sit down, figure out what that's going to be and what you're going to say in your greeting. I script mine because I'm bad at winging it for the most part. But if you're good at that, then just wing away. Otherwise, write it out and figure out what your passcode's going to be. And it'll ask you your name as well. But it is a tutorial, so it's going to take you through and kind of talk about the voicemail. Not a lot of mystery here, but there is a spreadsheet I have sent out. Hopefully you can get a copy. But the area in the boxed area are all the different ways you can access the voicemail. So by your phone, it's really easy on a daily basis. You hit the voicemail key. It'll ask for the passcode. You punch in your passcode, and you're in. If you're at someone else's desk, it gets a little harder. You have to hit star because it thinks it's getting into that person's voicemail. You'll hit the voicemail button, then you'll hit star, then you'll enter your own extension or mailbox number, and then you'll hit star again. It'll then ask you for a passcode, and then you can get in. So if you happen to be down in the stadium somewhere and not close, but you want to check your voicemail, you can do so from any phone in the building. From outside, you can dial the main number. When you hear an auto attendant of any kind, you can hit star, and then you'll enter your mailbox number, and then you'll follow that with your passcode. You can also, if you have a direct dial number, which means a number that you directly dial and it rings only your phone, then you can dial that. When you hear your own voice, you hit star, it'll ask for your passcode, and then you're in. So there's lots of ways to access your voicemail from outside if you need to change a greeting or whatever for the day, or just check your messages. The voicemail flow portion of it is just set up once you're in the voicemail, what can you do? And it looks a little complex, but it really isn't. It does 3 things. You can play messages if you have new messages. You can play old messages. You can create a message to send to somebody, or you don't even have to do it from your voicemail. You can just call somebody, and if they don't answer, it goes to their voicemail. But this way you don't have to ring their phone. So if they owe you money or something, you don't want to talk to them, you could create a voicemail from here and send it to them rather than ring their phone. And then the last thing is just to go back into your personal options. You can change your password, your greeting, your name, and the basic stuff you did when you initially set it up. You can also go through the tutorial all over again if you wanted to relearn it. I don't think anyone has ever done that, but you could. Let's first talk about play the message. I did go ahead in here and I put some cheats underneath where it says play. They're really hard to see depending on how big your screen is. But when you get the sheet, you'll see that the big one is rewind 5 seconds by hitting star. So if you're listening to a message and someone says, call me back at 35555, and you're like, what? You can hit the star key and back up in 5-second increments to re-listen to the message again. There's a fast forward there. There's a pause for 30-second increments. I guess that's if someone walks into your office while you're trying to listen to your messages, you can hit 1 to pause it. And then 30 seconds later, it begins playing it again. So those are just some little cheats there. The rest of it's going to be told to you every time you listen to a message. So every time you listen to a message and the message plays, you have the option to play it again. You can answer back the person who have left the message. You can give it to another user, which is forwarding it to someone else. You can keep it or you can discard it. Okay, so those are all options that you have. If you decide that you need to create a voicemail message for another user without ringing their phone, then you just hit 6. It'll offer it to you as well. Make a message, press 6. You'll hit 6, and then you'll dial in the mailbox number or the extension number of the person you want to leave a message for. It'll go beep. You'll leave your message, and then afterwards you can review it, or you can discard it and re-record it if you want. You can append it, which means adds to the end of it, the message. Or you can go into message options afterwards too and make it things like urgent, make sure they heard it right away. Marking it confidential means that they can't forward it to anyone else. You can get a return receipt if they've listened to it. So little functionality you can do. And then we talked about user options. So this is a little spreadsheet. It'll come in handy when you're first getting going, just so you know where you're at in the voicemail, but it won't be a lot of mystery. So go in, initially set up your voicemail, and you should be good to roll. So that's all I really have for you today. I wanted to leave you with these links. There is a self-paced featured teacher on this 6920. It's formal. It's not like mine, where you can go there and then you can kind of go in and touch the buttons, and it's like a interactive little space. Sometimes I work best with just kind of being told and shown around it, so you can see what works best for you. Also, if you're someone who's using MyClab, which is the companion to your phone, it's a little software package that runs where it gives you additional ability to look at call history. You can do some chatting. There's some goodies there. I left a link for that training as well. So I also have a video for that if it's something that comes in handy. So that's all I have for you today. I appreciate everyone's time, and I hope everything goes well, and thank you very much.